This is my 15-inch MacBook Pro 2012. It's a 2.6 GHz i7 model, meaning it's the more powerful of the basic configurations. Something you can do with this, but can't with most modern laptops, is upgrade the RAM, as well as a lot of other parts. I'm going to be going from 8 to 16 GB of RAM for this video, and showing you what improvements I find in benchmark performance, gaming, and just general use. You're probably not looking for a guide on how to do this, but if you're interested, on screen now is the exact spec of memory I had to buy to upgrade this MacBook Pro. So yeah, let's get straight into comparing the exact same MacBook with 8 versus 16 GB of RAM. First off, boot time. Depending on the computer, adding more RAM has been known to improve boot speeds in some cases, but can also slow them down. I booted up my laptop with 8 GB of RAM into macOS Catalina in a time of 26.72 seconds. After upgrading it to 16 GB, it performed the same task in 27.25. Considering half a second is within the realm of human error for a stopwatch, I wouldn't necessarily attribute the difference to the RAM. As far as I'm concerned, the boot times were very similar and not strongly impacted by RAM amounts at all. On Geekbench 6's CPU test, my MacBook Pro scored 711 single-core and 2458 multi-core. This was with 8 GB of RAM, by the way. Here are some of the finer details. It's worth noting that these performances are really low in the grand scheme of things. M1 MacBooks would double or triple the scores seen here. So after upgrading to 16 GB of RAM, I ran the test again. 725 single-core, 2544 multi-core. That's an improvement, but it's an improvement of 14 on single-core, with 86 on multi-core. While it is fair to attribute the better performance to the 16 GB of RAM, it is only an improvement of under 5%. What you start to notice a lot with older MacBooks is the CPU can't be upgraded, and that's generally the weak point on these things. 10 years ago, a CPU with a clock speed of 3.6 GHz and 4 cores would have been a pretty good thing to have in a laptop. Unfortunately, that's just not the case anymore. Cinebench R23 took a long time to run on this laptop, but with 8 GB of RAM I ended up getting a score of 689. Really not brilliant, as you can see the newer i7s are beating it by some magnitude. I upgraded the RAM to 16 GB and ran the test again, only to get a lower score of 679. I'm not sure what caused this, considering the conditions I ran the test were the exact same both times. Essentially, what we've learnt is, if you're stressing the CPU by working heavily with complex software, doubling your RAM to 16 GB is unlikely to help you in the case of older machines like this. Let's take a look at a test that simulates a different scenario then. I got Tomb Raider for Mac on Steam and ran the game's benchmark with my graphics set to low. With 8 GB of RAM, my average FPS was 49.5, with a low of 37 and highest of the most my display setup would allow, 60. I ran the benchmark again 20 minutes later, this time with 16 GB of RAM, and got FPS averaging 47.9. The minimum was 35.7, and max once again locked at 60. So there you go. Unfortunately, no performance improvements noticeable in gaming either. From what I saw anyway. Some games with really fancy graphics, like Cyberpunk or Red Dead 2 for example, might benefit, let's say 5 to 10% from having more RAM. But there's a reason I'm not showing you those. Almost any Mac is going to struggle running games like that. And this 2012 would definitely struggle getting more than 15 FPS, regardless of RAM size. Don't let this video boss you around and tear you away for an upgrade that could help you though. If you run a lot of browser tabs at once and open multiple projects in creative apps, 16 GB of RAM is something nice to have, and almost undoubtedly will help. If you want to edit a video like I do, or game, 16 GB is just not that helpful in reality. You've got to remember, older MacBooks like my 2012 have fairly weak CPUs and GPUs by today's standards. You'll likely spend around 40 smackaroos upgrading the RAM, depending where you shop. That's about 25% of the cost of the entire laptop, if not more. Thanks for watching one of my videos. There's lots more on the channel, and you won't miss my next one if you get subscribed, which really helps me out.